Those who cheated, why? Hello everyone! Write your opinions in the comments. I'll be interested to read them. Enjoy watching. Story 1. Only once when I was a teenager trying to score quantity points of my friends instead of being thoughtful about the quality I was disrespecting. And she was quality. Story 2. I remember reading a story years and years ago that saved me a lot of heartache and regret. Long story short, guy comes home to find his wife with another man and he leaves. He's angry, he's hurt, and he's confused. He thought of doing the same to hurt, cheating and sticking it to her. Make her have all the same feelings he was. He called his dad to more or less vent, and his dad gave him the advice of, I know it sucks, and no one would blame you if you did it, but go with your greater character. You have to live with yourself afterwards. It's already going to hurt enough. That man didn't realize just how many people he would be reaching with that simple comment. Saved me a bunch with other areas of life. Story 3. I used to be a real shithead. In my early 20s, I got comfortable in a long relationship and was just a piece of shit. I finally got out of that relationship and realized how fucking much it hurt them. I stopped. I never did it again. That was 20 years ago. As far as why, opportunism, poor decision-making, hormones, mostly just being a POS. Now, I couldn't imagine. I'm too honest, I'm too open, Here, as a person who has recently felt it, it's fucking brutal. It's like taking your self-ego and just ripping it to pieces. Having someone you truly love just step out, well, it's something else. Just be honest, folks, it's easy. Speak up. Story 4 boils down to low self-esteem. Having always been the chaser, the one to make the moves as it were, the change to feeling wanted, desired, chased was incredible. I'll never know what would have been, but it ruined a marriage for which I'll never not hate myself, whilst somehow leading to a second marriage that just works. Story 5, I was selfish. I wasn't getting what I needed in my relationship, so instead of being a decent person and talking about it, I just went and got it from my ex. Longer version. The girl I was dating at the time, C, was kind of a rebound for my previous ex, H. We had a lot in common and got along really well. I was emotionally unhealthy, clearly, and still wasn't over H. She still had a presence in my life at the time, most times to just still figure out remaining bills, but sometimes she would talk about our relationship, all through email. Through a combination of H wooing me, C likely feeling inadequate due to my continued communication with H, and C and I not having compatible love languages, I ended up fooling around with H a few times. I even got to the point where I felt maybe the grass was greener and I would go back with H. After a few times, I really didn't like who I was because of what I had done. I'd even broken up with C in preparation of going back to be with H. I typed up an email and admitted everything to C and basically begged for her back. I called it off with H, who went nuclear and showed up at my place unannounced, accusing me of using her for sex. I tried to explain to her that wasn't the case, that I realized being with her wasn't what I wanted. I felt awful because not only had I broken C's heart, but now also H's. For whatever reason, C agreed to take me back. I never talked to H again and didn't even think of cheating again. We tried to make it work over the next year or so, and not surprisingly, she admitted she couldn't get over it, and we split. This was over 2 years ago, and I think of the damage I've done often, and it sucks. I'm in a very good relationship now, and absolutely won't cheat again. Story 6. Because I was selfish and foolish, I thought if she doesn't find out and it doesn't change how I feel about her, then where is the harm? She found out, and seeing how much it destroyed her made me feel like the biggest piece of shit. I will never put anyone in that position again. Story 7. This happened with my parents. I remember my dad tried to call my mom out for being the one to ruin the relationship for it after she left him too. Having watched my parents and family my entire life, it's easy to see why it happened. Not that I condone how they treated each other, but I do sympathize with my mom more in this case, because I know how long and how hard she tried to make things work. My mom has never had stable, genuine support from her family, and she married a man who treated her similarly, and they were young when they married. She learned to deal with abuse from her family, and she stayed with my dad because he technically treated her better. He at least didn't hit her or abandon her. Codependency is a hard habit to kick, especially when you're conditioned to be that way from a young age. Thankfully, she had a decent amount of time after they divorced to figure a lot of stuff out. I'm pretty proud of how far she's come. Sadly, I can't say the same for my dad. Story 8 I almost did recently. Girlfriend was a repeat verbally abusive psycho, with no recall or ability to self-check or correct herself, and never really held herself accountable. so I started looking around. Luckily, I broke it off after calling the cops on her for hitting and spitting on me, so it didn't come to me actually cheating. It's better this way. But I honestly would have cheated on her. Story 9. We got together when I was 15 and he was 18. He was my first proper relationship and he was controlling and manipulative. I had no support from my family to leave him and I couldn't see another way out. I cheated, he found out, and luckily it made him leave so I could force a separation. He pretty much lived at my house by that point. It's not ideal, and I'm sad I hurt him, but at that age I had no idea what else to do. I couldn't see to get out of the relationship any other way. Story 10. In a lot of my past relationships, I was very immature. I had a lot of boyfriends who insulted me, put me down, or negged me. I should have done the right things and left, but I felt as though I'd be a psycho for leaving over a "you need to hit the gym" comment, or "my female friend is a lot prettier than you, I wish you looked like her," or "I love how slim so-and-so's waist is, but you're never going to get that skinny and it makes me sad," or "you know I really wanted to date your friend as she's prettier but she's taken, so you'll do." So instead I cheated. I was so angry but felt as though my anger wasn't justified. I felt as though I was being compared to the other women they actually wanted but couldn't have. And it was my own personal failing for not being good enough, so I couldn't get angry at them or leave. So I'd cheat as revenge. If they wanted to list other women, I'd take it one step further and be with other men. It meant that whenever they negged me, I simply felt smug because while they wished they could, I actually was. I'd not even try and hide it in hopes they found out and knew how I felt. And then, if they got upset, I'd jump straight tell them that while they were with me despite me not being good enough, I was with them despite them not being good enough. Except I actually managed to pull others while they couldn't only hope, and I couldn't help that I managed to pull while they didn't. That was on them. Two people who obviously wanted to cheat on each other, we deserved each other. I was no worse than them. They set the standard of our relationship as end, that was unfaithfulness. I was simply just more successful at it. Story 11. I've often been the one they cheat with. The most common reason is a shitty marriage that they cannot leave without experiencing a serious drop in lifestyle. Or in some cases, without ending up deported because a divorce would result in their residence permit getting canceled. Another one is that doing something forbidden and risking getting caught turns them on like there's no tomorrow. One of them flat out said that in addition to that, most of her relationships have ended with her cheating and either getting caught or generally not being able to live with herself after the deed and just breaking up to save face. Story 12. 13 years ago. I, 18M at the time, was immature. My girlfriend at the time wasn't wanting to give me emotional support I needed at the time. I had 3 family members die in the span of a month. Our mutual female friend picked up on that and did offer support. I'm a bit on the spectrum and didn't realize that friends' true intentions, and next thing I knew, the friend and I were in bed together. I didn't know what to do, so I just stayed quiet about it because GF was still being closed off to me while the friend was still trying to help me deal with what I was going through. The friend's dad found out what her and I had done and told literally everyone he could, not out of wanting to do the right thing, he just hated me and was overprotective of his daughter. To make matters worse, I found out that the reason my GF was being closed off was because she had found out that she was pregnant. We weren't trying to conceive, and wanted to keep the child but didn't know how to tell me. I'm not trying to make excuses for what I did. I 100% was in the wrong and should have picked up on what the friend's feelings towards me, and I should have put in more effort to communicate better with my GF. The ending of the story isn't too bad. Her and I aren't together anymore, for obvious reasons. Neither of us hold a grudge with each other, and we have shared custody of our now 12-year-old child. Story 13. Reading some of these made me oddly angry, like some are very regretful or seem to be from people who've grown since, and others are just like, she was being a total bitch and I like pussy, and people who paint themselves as the victim, or like they had no choice. At least from the former, you get a feel for people's mindsets and see the mistakes you can learn from. I feel weird about it as someone whose dad cheated, and it kinda left me with a weird loyalty complex. Like I have to be extra loyal to people to make up or prove I'm not like him. My dad's case being one of the latter ones, that he basically found pregnancy unattractive and thought he deserved someone who wasn't pregnant. Story 14. I just want to say, as someone who's been cheated on, I really appreciate the honesty coming from you all. It's very encouraging to see growth expressed and about not wanting to do it again or committing to not doing it again. The fact is, people make bad decisions, but it doesn't make them a bad person. You get to decide whether you're going to learn from it and grow. Story 15. Because we had been together for 11 years and from the start, she told me she wanted children. 11 years in, 6 years of marriage, and she turns around and gives me excuses of her career as to why we can't. We were in our 30s, going on to our mid-30s. She already had fertility issues. She told me we may never have kids, all the while making me go to fertility tests myself, lying to a fertility doctor that we had tried, but weren't getting pregnant, all so that she could be fast-listed to have her own suspected fertility issues investigated sooner rather than later. Meanwhile, we hadn't had sex in 2.5 years. Even before that, sex was so infrequent that a year could go by, and we had to be intimate twice. She was a victim of SA from her childhood, so I was understanding and patient. She told me she wasn't attracted to me anymore because I put on weight, so I lost weight, I became fit and trim. Still, nothing. Then, during couples counseling, she admits that for years she's been watching porn and masturbating frequently. Straw, camel, back broken. It took one person being kind to me, and all my oaths meant nothing. It's not an excuse. I have none. I certainly do not condone what happened. She was my best friend. I have never loved someone as much before or since. The loss of our marriage was the worst thing we had both gone through, but by that stage, it had become untenable. Just don't cheat, just leave, like I should have. Story 16. I have never cheated on my mate, but I did cheat with an engaged girl once. I was 21 and she was 19. She was already engaged and living with the guy. We worked together, talked a lot, and honestly, I fell in love. It started with kisses and then make-out sessions after work sitting in one of our cars. Then he spotted us sitting outside on a smoke break holding hands one day. He flipped out on her and got physical with her. I stepped in and he left. She stayed at my apartment that night. Said she was going to have the cops come over while she moved her stuff out the next day because dude was older and had already done prison time for beating the shit out of his ex-wife. My roomie was out of town, and since she was going to break up with the guy, I told her she could move in with us. Because of this, I crossed the line totally that night, the one time we actually had sex, and it was repeatedly over several hours. Glorious shit. Next day, she tells me to go ahead and go in for my shift at work. She'll get the cops to go with her to get her stuff. Halfway through my shift, she texts me and says she decided to stay with him. She called in and quit because he didn't want her working with me anymore. She ignored my replies. I found out through people later that she did the same thing with a coworker at her new job and had hit on several people at our work before I started there. The whole thing fucked me up for quite a while and led to alcoholism. I really was in love with the little slut. And most of all, I crossed multiple lines I never wanted to cross because of it. The drinking and depression were not just because I didn't get the girl, but because I fucked over all my morals for nothing. Now, 24 years later, I realize I got exactly what I deserved in that case. I never even approached the idea of fooling around again, even though my next girlfriend was an abusive nut job. I was tempted to cheat on her a few times out of spite, but I had learned my lesson. Then I met my wife. She made me get sober. We've been together for 21 years, married for 20, and the thought of cheating has seriously never crossed my mind. She's amazing, and I put in the hard work and effort to deserve her.